Peter, this is so great to have you here and to have the honor to interview you. And I want just to share how I know you from my heart.
Okay.
That I remember joining High Human Awareness Institute, the Love, Intimacy, Sexuality workshops, and you have been facilitator. And I just, I remember you're leading the room, like you're leading exercises. And then I came up, I was sharing something in the large group share. And then I remember just like you're asking something and it creates a huge breakthrough for me.
Mm,
And that's how I know you, that
mm,
you have this beautiful ability in you, that you are with your presence, you tune into a person so deeply that then you ask a question and it shook my whole universe, and then it happened many times.
mm.
And I enjoy being with you in the room of love, and now having you here online and having online experiences with you has been amazing. So welcome, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And, and could you share several words about yourself? Like how would you, just what we want to know about you?
Sure. Might as well start with what I'm feeling in the moment, and I'm very excited. Just before we went live, there were a lot of people that came on the screen who I know for years, and that's been really fun to know that they've wanted to come and join with us today. And Luba, you're always just so alive and so full of life, and I just adore being around you. And I watch you just spread your love wherever you are. You know, as you came on team at High, in the meetings at High, you were the one that ignited the team to go out there and love them. I thought a lot more than a lot of times we facilitators did. So I've just noticed how infectious and beautiful and contagious in the most positive way your love is. And so I'm really, really honored that you've asked me to be here today. And
Mm,
thanks so much. And
thank you, Peter. Yeah.
And for me, where I am physically, I'm in a little office up kind of behind my house where I have my private practice. And in these days, I'm on Zoom a whole lot up here, and it's a really quiet, peaceful place. I love this little temple behind my house. So it's nice to be here in my heart. So lots of breakthroughs have happened in this little room, and it's really, really fun to.
My first question that how like I'm very passionate about sex education. This is something growing up I didn't know it's possible, but now when I see that it's that people teach about sex, people teach about intimacy, how did you come across being in this area teaching about sexuality?
Well, actually, how I ended up at the Human Awareness Institute, which is kind of in a little line of different experiences I've had around sexuality and spirituality, kind of the combination of the two. But I actually had a client who 30 years ago went and did the High workshop and came to me in my office, and she was so changed and transformed in one weekend. I just said, "What happened to you?" And she told me about High. So my client actually got me to the workshop, myself and my not yet wife. We actually did our first High workshop one weekend. We got married the next weekend, and then we did level 2 the next weekend. So we're kind of intense people that go for it. And we had already planned to get married before level 1. It wasn't that level 1 opened the door to that, but it certainly made a wide open heart for that ceremony up on Mount Tan for my wife and I.
Going in the world, like sexuality is a taboo topic. Like people just are not comfortable talking about anything sexuality. And I know that like you are an open book about
Mm.
sexuality, your relationship with sexuality, right? Like how are you surviving in this world? How are you doing in the world?
Um, Well, I'm in a different phase of my sexuality than I was when I started the High workshops. I was much younger and much more drawn and attracted to sexuality. And all of that came about, I guess I might as well go back to ashram days, because I've lived in several different ashrams, and it's fascinating to see the different belief systems in the different ashrams. And then the first ashram I was in, the men were on one side, the women were on the other side. Everyone was celibate. Nobody touched one another, and it was a meditative environment. And women and men were kept very separately, and that was beautiful. It was a whole period of time to just be with myself. And then when I left that ashram, I actually heard a tape by who he was Rajneesh in those days, but Osho became Osho later, and it was such ancient wisdom. I couldn't believe that person was still on the planet. And I was trying to decide what to do next with my life. And someone walked by. In those days, sannyasins, the followers of Osho, wore maroon and a mala around their neck. And I had this thought, what do I do next? And a person with that mala and dressed in maroon walked by. And I said, oh, I guess that means I go to Pune. So then I got on a plane to India, and I was just blown away at how beautiful sexuality was held in that community. After the celibacy ashram, now I was in a basically in the moment free love kind of situation. And it was so beautiful just to have no past or no future to any interactions with anybody, whether they were sexual or otherwise. It was just with permission and total camaraderie and friendliness and aliveness, and mostly the expression of sexuality was just welcomed there. And I had no idea all of that could exist anywhere. And it just kind of, because I was in the collective belief system of the beauty of all of that, just kind of wiped away any hesitancy and shame and guilt I had. It was just all in this collective agreement that it's a beautiful, beautiful spiritual experience. And it's not something to be bypassed in order to get enlightened. It's a vehicle to enlightenment. The inclusion of the body and the inclusion of the expression of sexuality was a route to enlightenment. And that had never occurred to me. I thought you had to get past sexuality and over it and be celibate and all of that stuff. So it was a beautiful in the moment experience in which you might be going from the dining hall to where you lived at night after dinner, and you'd sit next to someone on the bus, and something would start happening energetically, and you'd just look at each other and you'd say, your place or mine. And when I first got there, I was pretty naive about all of this. So one of the first nights I was there, I went home with this gorgeous German woman, and we connected, and I was falling in love with her, like romantically and everything, like normally happens out here. And after we were sexual the next morning, we were both getting up to go to our separate jobs. And I said to her, I'll see you tonight. And she said, I have no idea. And then that moment I went, oh, so that's what's happening here. And so I lived there for about 4 years, and just in the moment, in a very, very beautiful environment in which life was celebrated. Sex was life, and it was just a part of a bigger picture of spirituality and the inclusion of the human body as part of the vehicle, to be worshipped and adored and all of that. And that was just such a eye-opening experience for me. So I had that in my background when some years later, my client came to me and told me about the Human Awareness Institute. So as I came into that first workshop, how we got there is my wife and I were talking about having an open relationship, and we were kind of wondering what to do and how to do that in integrity and what that was about. And someone said, well, talk to Stan Dale. So we called him, just phoned him up, and he picked up the phone and spent 2 hours on the phone with us spontaneously, just talking about life and, the workshops and himself. And he was so beautiful and so full of heart and love and kindness that we signed up right away to go to the workshop and never looked back. Just immediately got very, very involved. And when I go for something, I go for it. And so within a year, I was actually leading the workshops because I was just ripe. I was just in the right place in my own evolution to step into all of that. And High was in a place where it was just expanding at that point in time. So that's how it all began at High.
Yeah. This is so amazing. I'm listening how you're describing that, just being in the moment, just like feeling, you're next to the person, and then you feel this desire, and then you decide in which place. And I'm wondering, like, how did you manage sexuality and intimacy? Because in my experiences, a lot of times I felt that sexual drive, I would go for it, but then in the morning I felt like there is a stranger next to me, and I didn't connect, intimately, and I was struggling with that. So I'm wondering, how was for you that like sexual drive? Did it have intimacy as well, or it didn't?
That's a great question, actually, because at the time I hadn't done high workshops, so I learned so much about intimacy there, and it wasn't exactly that personal. The sexual connection wasn't actually forming a personal relationship. So in retrospect, there wasn't a lot of intimacy as such. There was, what can I say, energetic expression and an expansion and a beauty into the universe that was more like a universal connection than a personal connection. Um, Everyone there was in love with Osho, with Bhagwan, in a very deep way. That's what we had in common. Actually, was everybody's heart and spirit and soul had been deeply touched by him. So it was almost like making love with Bhagwan at some level, or whatever the celebration of the community was, and all of that. And I've often wondered, after having done high, I wonder what it would have been like to be on the ranch with Osho, with the tools I have around intimacy. And I'm not sure it would have worked as well. I think that was needed to happen there. And then now there's a whole different kind of sexuality that does have to do with personal and intimacy and connection and tenderness and a past and a future and creating relationship through sexuality. And that's just a different flavor of sex. And both of them are beautiful. They're just a whole different game to be played at some level.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That totally makes sense.